How's it going, everybody? Jay Williamson here for our next episode of the Ride Along podcast. We have a very interesting guest this time, Mr. Neil Gerrald. He is the founder and owner of Air Now, one of the largest HVAC air conditioning places, companies in Northeast Texas. He's basically been working in HVAC since 2005. He founded his own company in 2015. They now have over 2,300 customers across the Northeast Texas region. So I know he's got a lot of interesting stories about starting his own business and how that's been changing and stuff like that with technology. So let's just get right into it. And can you just kind of tell us, for all the listeners who don't really know what HVAC is, like a brief definition of essentially, what that is, what that means?
Sure. H obviously stands for heating. The V is for ventilation, which is what a lot of people don't know that we do, is like ventilating bathroom exhaust fans, um, like kitchen appliances, all
Right.
that, anything that needs to be vented, basically we do that.
Mm-hmm.
And the AC is air conditioning.
Gotcha. So can you talk about, it's 2005 and you're getting started with this. What is that process like? If you're talking to a student today about getting started in that, what does that look like? How does someone get involved in this?
Well, for me and my history, I was in my early 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working for Cooper Tire, and they were trending to where it was getting bad. They started a layoff. They had a big strike happened, and it scared me, and it pushed me to where there was another guy that I was working with where he had gone through the heating and air conditioning class at Texas County College, and he had mentioned that, and I looked
Mm-hmm.
into it, and I was either going to do plumbing, heating and air conditioning, or electrical. But I noticed in the air conditioning side of it, I could get there quicker.
Right.
And the reason being is the plumbing and electrical have the journeyman process, and
Mm-hmm.
it just takes a long time to get a license and open up your own business. So I went the AC route, and thought really I was just going to be doing it on the side while working at Cooper Tire, but it ended up really taking off for me, and I left there after 2 years and went to work for a company as a technician.
Mm-hmm.
And
So can you kind of detail on like what the actual process is of getting that certification?
yeah,
Like, is it just taking
yeah.
classes somewhere or?
So when I went to Texas County College,
Mhm.
I had to go to the night class, obviously, because I was working during the day,
Right.
and went through that, and it was a very long days because you're
Mhm.
working all day and then going to school at night.
Mhm.
Tough. Um,
Yeah.
that's something I would highly recommend if you're going to get into this. You need to do it as young as possible. Don't wait till you're married and have a family, because
Mhm.
it was rough.
Yeah.
But I fought through it. Went through the night class. There's really no set certification for heating and air conditioning. Texas County College will give you a certificate, um, and it gives you a basic knowledge to where you can go to an employer like me and say, "Hey, I've gone through the class. I've got some basic knowledge. Um, where can I start?"
Mhm.
So when somebody comes to me and kind of like what I was too, you're bottom of the totem pole. That's you're starting off at the very bottom, and you got to work your way up. And
Right.
what I'm saying is there's a lot to learn after you get out of school.
Yeah.
Probably just like any job.
Right. So is that how it is for all colleges? Like, if they have a program like that and you go to an employer and you say, I've gotten my certificate from this college, like, is that because do y'all do hiring outside of just the Texarkana region? Like, where are some other places y'all?
I'll tell you too, it doesn't even have you don't really even have to go to a college.
Mhm.
That's the good thing about this, and the good thing about the trades.
Mhm.
Say you graduate from high school and you want to be a plumber, or you want to be a
Right.
heating guy. If you have the right connections, you could go to work as a apprentice right off the bat.
Gotcha.
You
Uh-huh.
Um, Now, I would highly suggest going to a college first,
Mm.
do the program, because they're offering so much more. They're offering, I think they're making them take the English classes, and, not just the trade classes, to try to get them, more of a educated background, which
Yeah.
is,
So
which,
can you talk about what it was like right when you got started off, kind of what, the day looks like right when you're at the entry level positions and whatnot.
Yeah, when I first started, it's you really going to start off as a helper, an apprentice.
Mm,
You're going to be riding with somebody who's more experienced than you.
gotcha.
They're going to be training you, and that's one thing I really like about this job is the fact that we're teaching and training at all times. Those
Hmm.
apprentices that are riding along with us, it's really our responsibility to
Hmm.
bring these guys up and to show them the right way to do it.
Hmm.
And that's the way it started off for me. I had somebody that I apprenticed with, rode along with, and did that for probably 6 to 8 months, and then it got to a point where um, we needed somebody. The company did, and they just kind of put me out there, and I had to do it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So then now for your company, like what does your average day look like being the owner of your own company and stuff like that with all these different thousands of clients and such?
Well,
And obviously the average day now is very different than what it was, 6 months ago before COVID-19 struck and
oh,
whatnot. But
definitely, yeah, definitely. But right now, I mean, my job is, I am the business owner,
mhm,
but I'm trying to keep my overhead as low as possible to keep our
right.
costs down as much as possible. So I'm really the only one in the office full time.
Mhm,
And my wife comes in, helps me, a couple of days of the week with the scheduling. Um, and then I also have somebody who comes in and helps with the payroll and all that kind of stuff. But my day to day operations is really kind of like air traffic control.
mhm,
I've got 4 technicians that work for me. I'm directing them at all times, telling them where to go, what to do,
mhm,
answering any questions they have, helping them on the phone because, like I was just saying, a lot of times we have to put these guys out there, and it really takes 5 years on
really?
the job working
Yeah.
every day to where you're really a competent technician to where you're not calling and asking questions all the time where you feel like, yeah, I've got this. So yeah, I'm constantly answering phone calls and helping these guys out,
Mhm,
training them. We have training classes every single morning when these guys come in. We talk about, calls we've had the day before,
right.
um, problem calls, dealing with customer service,
Mhm,
that kind of thing. But that's what it basically in the morning we're training, getting ready for our day, send the guys out, and then a big part of my job too is going out. I'm looking at uh, potential jobs, quoting jobs,
mhm,
just trying to keep the schedule full.
mhm.
That way, my guys will be able to work.
So what does it look like for you're a technician, you pull up to a job site. Like what is kind of like the routine for that essentially? I guess does it really depend on what you're looking at, but what is that kind of like a little bit?
No,
I guess
it's
if you're
actually
sitting next
very
to
routine, and
okay.
that's what we train as a routine. We even tell the guys the exact place to park. You
Really?
would park in the driveway or
Right.
park out by the road, but we like the guys to park in the driveway because our vans are wrapped.
Hmm.
So when a car goes by in each direction, they can see the big billboard in the neighborhood.
Right.
We teach the guys a very routine way of actually going to the door, knocking on
Mhm.
the door, take 2 steps back, put your shoe covers on, hand them a business card. Very routine. Um, even down to how to address problems with the customer. Uh,
Gotcha.
we do a diagnostic types thing where we go in, diagnose the problem, and then we let people know what the price is going to be before we ever do anything. So we have to present that, and that's a big thing. The guys that come in here, they have the technical ability, but a lot of them don't have the ability to.
Sales experience with it and stuff.
Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
have the ability to hold a conversation with the customer and to to make sure they smell good, make sure they look good. I kind of don't mean to get off the subject, but where I came up with this was I worked retail sales for years when I was in college and high school, and I knew how to talk to people, how to present myself,
Mhm.
and that really helped me, because what I did is I brought that retail sales experience, I brought that into the heating and air conditioning side of it.
Mm-hmm.
uh, it really helped because people appreciate that. That's what they want. They want customer service.
Right. So,
Um, anyway, that's kind of a typical thing for our technicians, and it can be stressful. Every service call is going to be stressful.
right. So like what's the, like the most important aspect of your job that probably people don't realize, or maybe the most difficult aspect about your job?
I'm going to say probably the most difficult aspect is when getting things wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's times where we may diagnose a system wrong, or we may think we have it fixed, and we have to go back. We call it a callback.
Right.
Say we go to your house and we say, "Hey, Jay, we fixed your air conditioner and everything's good." Well, the next day it stops working. You have to call back, and you're frustrated. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't know the frustration that we have. You know,
Right.
we, we feel terrible about it. We don't want to have to keep coming back. And it's difficult because there again, we don't have a lot of people going into these trades,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard training these guys, and mistakes unfortunately are going to be made. But it's just that's one thing that's very difficult for me is the callbacks and the mistakes. Not to say I'm not saying we're making a lot of them, but it's just that's affects us more than what people think that it affects us.
Yeah. And so like how many jobs or clients does a person see in a typical day?
We usually recommend that our technicians, well, we're not recommending, really is what our technicians will run is usually about 4 to 6 calls a day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's actually better to run less calls a day because, I'm not trying to rush the guys, because we want the guys to be as thorough as possible.
Right.
Um, look the complete system over, and make sure that we're not missing anything. But during the summer months, it's typically between 4 to 6 calls a day. Could be 8 calls a day.
Yeah.
Makes for very, very long days. I mean, we'll get up, start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we may not end till 1 o'clock in the morning the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really long days. But that's typically how many calls we're looking at.
Right. So since you started in 2005, like how have you seen technology change, and how has that like impacted, what you do in the day-to-day tasks and stuff like that?
Well, on the business side of it, it's changed a lot. Just with our dispatching software and
Mm.
our customer database software,
Right.
that was huge. When I opened my business in 2015, I was a one-man show. I was it. And I was looking for technology to take the place of my office.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to find a program that um, helped me tremendously. I mean, even down to where it sends a text to the customer, let them know when we're coming,
Mm-hmm.
um, sending invoices electronically, letting people pay with credit cards online. All that people really, really appreciate it. And I didn't even realize it at the time how much people would appreciate that.
Right.
It's been huge for us. Customers I've found love communication. They want to know when the tech is going to be there. It
Mhm.
also sends them a picture of the technician that's coming.
Oh,
Which,
well, that's actually, yeah.
yeah, because people, especially probably 90% of the people we deal with at a house is the woman of the house, the
Hmm.
mom, and she's a little nervous about letting somebody in her house.
Right.
Um, she wants to know who's coming. She doesn't want them to show up in a white panel van.
Hmm.
It needs to be a wrapped van. She needs to see a picture of who's coming, know their name,
Hmm.
and we just want to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So
Yeah.
technology on the business side has been huge for us,
Right.
and helping me organize my business. Now, on the other side of things, as far as the air conditioning units, it's constantly changing.
Hmm.
It, with all the government regulations and wanting everything to be more efficient, um, it is it is changing by the day. It's just like computers.
Yeah.
You buy a computer, and the very next day it's out of date.
Hmm.
Same way with air conditioning units.
So then when it's changing that rapidly, like what do you have to do for the technicians to keep them, staying caught up and updated on those changes and stuff?
Well, it's a lot of training, obviously. It's a lot of staying in contact with suppliers and distributors and getting on their email list and making sure that they send us all the information they can on the
Mhm.
systems that are out there. We incorporate that into our daily training sessions. If you can imagine, your vehicle, you get these recalls on vehicles all the time. Well, we get the same thing on air conditioning units.
Right. Oh, wow.
We have to get letters and say, hey, we've got a unit that they've put out where the manufacturing process screwed up. You've got to go back and fix this.
Mhm.
Same thing in the AC business. We do the same thing. So it's a lot of communication with our distributors, our suppliers, and just daily, just as much training as we can possibly get.
Yeah. So can you take me back to like, it's 2015, you've made the decision to open up your own business, kind of why you made that decision and what you've done to help it grow since then and how it's, changed up to now in 2020?
Yeah. So before 2015, I was working for another company, and I worked for them for like 8 years,
Yeah.
and worked my way up from technician to operations manager there.
Mhm.
And myself, I'd gotten to a point where I did not see any more growth for me, and that's the big thing for me is I have to be challenged. I'm always looking for what's next, and
Right.
that was what was next for me, and that's all I could see. And it was very, very scary in 2015 because I had a really stable job. I've got a wife, 3 kids, and
Right.
jumping out of there and opening your own business
Mhm.
it scared me to death. It
Mhm.
took a lot of faith and trust in God,
Yeah.
and and it it's been phenomenal so
Mhm.
far. I mean, I had huge support from the community. I had made a lot of connections with a lot of people in this community,
Mhm.
and they followed. And it's since opening in 2015, as far as the growth, that's been crazy too because I've gone from, like I said, a one man company, a one man show, me driving
Right.
in a van, to 4 technicians, and we have a full time install crew.
Mhm.
We've got 5 vans now, and it's and also too in 2019 we were able to buy out the company that I formerly worked
Wow.
for,
Yeah.
which was another huge boost for us too.
Mhm.
So that was kind of coming full circle for me,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now you left one company. Now you're buying it back a couple years later.
and it really was 2 to 3 years later I was buying them out, and
Awesome.
I just even talking about that now, it kind of gives me chills because
Right.
it's just, I've never talked about it like that.
Mhm.
But it was we've been, all I can say is we've been very blessed at Air now.
Mhm.
But I will tell you, talking about this trade, I'm very passionate about it.
Right.
Um, it has done wonders for my family,
Mhm.
and it all comes down to one thing. Was my attitude. And
Mhm.
that's, you know, going back to an earlier question you had about what would it take, a certification, how do you get into it?
Mhm.
You don't need any of that. All you need is
Right.
an attitude.
Yeah.
And somebody told me years ago, attitude will get you where ability won't.
Mhm.
I would gladly hire anybody off the street with a great attitude,
Mhm.
and I could teach them how to do what we do and
Mhm.
provide for their family.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So like, what advice then is it all about attitude? Then is that the advice, or what other skills do you see as being the most important then for someone to get started in this, or does it all just come back down to how hard you're willing to work, the attitude you have, and stuff like that?
Obviously, yeah, it does. The attitude, like I said, is huge, but I think you still have to have a giant work ethic.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to work very long hours.
Right.
Um, when you're first starting out, you're going to be working for little or no money. Um, and that's why, again, I say start young before you
Right.
get work your way up because it's just not something that's just going to be handed to you in your lap, and
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about what like that payment process is, like right when you're starting off versus like to where you get to today?
well, a first year apprentice, and it depends on the areas you're living in, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, Someplace like Austin, Texas may be a little different than, say, Texarkana.
Right.
We usually start our apprentices off somewhere around $10 to $12 an hour.
Hmm.
And then you work your way up from there. And we have a process put in place to where if you're first year, second year, third year, fourth year to fifth year, each year you're going to take, a test, an aptitude test of everything that you've learned over that year. And that could bump you up to more money. Um, Now, as a seasoned technician in this town,
Hmm.
I mean, you could make anywhere from $20 to $30 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so,
Um,
what's the step right above technician? I know you mentioned is an operator. Is that what you said, or managing
well, no,
operator?
well, if you're going to get away from being a heating and air conditioning technician, there's a lot of other things that you can do in this industry.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
Um, Service manager,
Hmm.
um, that's half my job title too. Operations manager, um, dispatcher
Dispatcher.
is huge. That's the directing traffic that I do. I'm eventually going to have to get to where I hire these different people, dispatchers, people who are making outbound calls at all times, somebody to manage the service side. You know, that's my biggest problem and my biggest weakness is
Yeah.
delegating.
Hmm.
It's
Trying to
like,
do it all on your own sometimes and
yeah,
stuff.
and I look at this as like my little baby that
Right.
I've grown, and
Hmm.
it's hard for me to let things go. But I know I'm going to eventually have to, and I'm working towards that. But that's part of my growth. That's part of where I'm headed. Like I was saying, I'm always looking for ways that can challenge me. That's part of my challenge.
So,
So,
how do you see one the trade and profession changing over the next 5 years, but as well as like what your company is going to have to do to change the next 5 years?
well, the biggest thing is the lack of people that are coming into the trade. The
Right.
average age of a plumber, heating and air technician is 57 years old.
Hmm.
Average age.
Wow. So I mean, there's going to be
So,
a phasing out of people who are going to start retiring and stuff.
exactly. Exactly. So we need more people, more younger people to come into this trade.
Hmm.
Um, and I get it. This is not for everybody. When I was going through high school, e- everybody said, you got to go to college, you got to get a degree, you got to be an accountant, a doctor, a lawyer.
Right.
Nobody ever once said, go be a heating and air guy, be a plumber, an electrician. Nobody ever said that to me.
Hmm.
I just happened to get into it because I worked for a plumber uh, during the summers when I was in high school,
Hmm.
and it kind of triggered something for me.
Yeah.
But as far as the big changes, we've got to have more people getting into this,
Hmm.
and that's going to be it's a challenge for us finding people. And what I've done is I've had to put processes in place to where I find young people and I grow them how I want them. I would rather do that than hire somebody who's been doing this 20 years.
Yeah. Being able to train them on your own and stuff like that, bring up kind of through the path that you kind of, carved out and
Guys
stuff.
who've been doing this 20 or 30 years and work for somebody else, they're not going to want to do things the way I want things done.
Right.
I'd rather have somebody to start with
Hmm.
to train the way I want them to run my service calls.
Yeah. And so then what do you see for air now looking like in 5 years, potentially, hopefully?
In 5 years, I would like to see maybe having five more technicians,
Yeah.
um, more trucks on the road, definitely. But I think the biggest thing is me being able to let go, like I was talking about, having more
Right.
people in the office, um, me being able to kind of sit back and watch things operate instead of being in the middle of things.
Hmm. That makes
Uh,
sense. Yeah.
that would be nice.
Hmm.
And that's just on a personal level. And another thing that's hard on technicians in this business and owners is the time away from family. Uh,
Right.
in the summer times, we miss a lot of football games, a lot of baseball games, a lot of dance recitals.
Hmm.
Um, we're not there like the other dads are there. It's not a 9 to 5 job.
Hmm.
Um, we pretty much work from, you know, till the phone stops ringing.
Yeah.
So we make a lot of family sacrifices, and that's something that I'm, you know, hoping as this grows that I can, spend more time with my
Right.
family and enjoy
Right.
the things that I've missed out on over the years.
Hmm. So to circle back to your earlier point about trying to bring these people in when they're young and stuff like that, are there like big recruiting efforts to go to the colleges and high schools, try to get people involved with this, or is that something you think needs to happen more of? Like, where do you think that kind of disconnect is, or students aren't understanding how good of an opportunity is, not just for heating and air, but for plumbing, electricians, so on and so forth? Where do you think that disconnect comes from?
Well, I think it has gotten better,
Hmm.
um, especially over the last 5 years. But I don't think there is enough of us going to high schools and interacting with um, the students and letting them know, hey, this is out there. Look
Right.
at the money you could make. It. Maybe you're not the type of student who wants to go to college, who
Mhm.
can. I mean, we're all different. We all learn different ways.
Right.
You know, I don't know exactly where the disconnect is in the high schools because I'm not familiar with all that the process of what they do.
Mhm.
But there definitely needs to be more of a connection with the trades,
Right.
bringing us in, letting us talk to the students, some kind of maybe a trade school day or something. I just don't know how that would work.
Because I've always personally thought it'd be interesting to do a career day where students could go and visit sites or something like that. I don't know how that works with liability reasons, but that people getting an actual idea of what really goes on, or just being able to talk to professionals like you would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
and
quite
we
a
do
lack
offer
of that right now, at least.
like if somebody's interested in the trade,
Hmm.
to do like a ride along with one of my technicians for the day.
Oh, really? That's pretty interesting.
Just kind of see if it's something they really want to get into.
Hmm.
Uh, we did that with one guy, and he is still with me to this day.
Hmm. Wow, that's
Turned out
great.
to be, he's turned out to be one of the best technicians that I have almost.
Yeah.
Um, but I could tell when he came in to talk to me, he was the one that said, "Hey, can I ride along with one of your technicians and just want to see if I'm interested?" You could tell the type of person he has, and you could tell the attitude that he had,
Mhm.
and it worked out well.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up too much time out of your day. So this is kind of I think, a good spot for you to say, if you could look back 20 years ago and look at, younger Neil Gerrald and give him one token line of advice, what would be the line you would be giving him right now with all your past, with all your, future wisdom and insights that you've gained?
Um, I think the biggest thing would probably be try not to work so much.
Uh-huh.
Um, take some time and enjoy life.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm. It did take a lot of hard work to get where I was at, but
Hmm.
I think there were times where I could have hit the pause button
Hmm.
and really paid attention to more of the important things. You know what I mean? And I think that's important in any job that you have.
Yeah.
We're all working so hard to get to a certain point, but we have to be able to hit that pause button and spend time with family and do what really matters.
Yeah.
That's that's a big thing because I know I was really gung ho back then, and I've always been real driven,
Hmm.
um, to the point where I have made some sacrifices. So
Right.
that'd be the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. For me, as someone who, I was doing research before this and I've already learned so much about it and stuff like that. We're going to make sure to link your website too, as well, to people out there who are more interested in stuff like that.
Okay.
So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Awesome.